Hello everyone, I'm Lazy Grouse, and I'm back with another DLC speculation video. This time for the Ogre Kingdoms. And I wasn't gonna do this one, since the Ogre Kingdoms already have 3 of their units announced, but you guys wanted it, so here we go. And since we already know about a bunch of them, I'm gonna speculate about what they will do and what I kinda hope they will do. But there seems to be about 5 units per DLC, so I do have some fun ideas on what the other units could be. They might be a little bit unlikely though, we'll see. And before we start looking at units, the one thing I hope for the most is a rework on their camps. And don't get me wrong, I like the camps, but I just really want to be able to move them. They're nomads, right? What's the point of a camp if you can't move it? Then you might as well just build a city and call it what it is. And I could honestly end my wishlist here, but I do want to talk about the units. So let's start with the big chungus of the DLC, the Thundertusk. It obviously had to be included. There would be riots in the streets if it wasn't. But I'm a bit worried it will be too similar to the Stonehorn. As in, pretty much the same thing, but with frostbite and a color swap or something. And they will probably be more different than that, but you never know. So I'm hoping they make it bigger than the Stonehorn, and they lean into its interaction with magic and ice. Because in the lore, it has an aura of air so cold, it congeals blood in creatures around it, its horns attracts and absorbs elemental magic, it breathes magical cold and can shoot ice balls that explodes into lightning icicles somehow. Warhammer logic, I guess. And it's usually ridden by 2 ogres with harpoon launchers. So besides the obvious slowing aura and or frostbite attacks that it will probably have, I kinda hope that it has a mortis effect, as in creatures around it just freeze to death. Also some kind of bound long-range exploding magic missile and a breath attack, and maybe have it generate some magic or give it some magic resistance thanks to its horns. And I think that would make it fairly different from the Stonehorn, but also have some different stats of course. First of all, it shouldn't be as heavily armored as a Stonehorn, because that's kinda the Stonehorn's whole thing, since it essentially has stone growing on it. I think it should also be a bit slower and not as good at charging as a Stonehorn, so that it feels slow and lumbering but incredibly deadly. Kinda like a living glacier that wants to step on you. But not so slow that it's not fun to use of course, just slower than the Stonehorn. That way, the Thundertusk is more of a unit that sits in the middle of combat and wants to stay there for as long as possible to use its mortis engine and slowing aura, while the Stonehorn has its fun charging through lines of infantry and just smushing things. So, let's stick with the cold theme and talk about the Yetis. And I think the Yetis could be a pretty good support and generalist fighter, since they will most likely also have chilling aura and or frostbite. So they will be great at locking things down and have something help them kill it with a good counter unit, or just have the Yetis themselves kill something because they should have pretty good stats. Maybe some armor piercing damage and evenly allocated stats, kinda similar to trolls but with some slowing utility and of course without the regen. They could also probably have stalk, since they are known to be very good at hiding, usually in snow, but I don't think CA will be that specific with stalk, although they did give Boglars buffs in water, so who knows. But that way they can sneak up on high value units and lock them down and kill them. They might be a little bit similar to Gorgeous that way, but with the cold theme and having them be generalist, I think they will set them apart enough. And the last of the announced units are the Blood Vultures. And they'll probably be a tier 2-ish unit, so they probably won't have that many fancy abilities. So they'll probably be a pretty decent harass unit like Croman Bats or the Carrion, since Carrion are just undead vultures. But they can probably get something like a bombard ability, like dropping stones or bombs with 1 charge. Because bombing blobs of units is always fun, so I kinda hope they give them some kind of bomb. But with the confirmed units out of the way, let's get into some speculation. And first of all, they already get some big monsters, some medium monsters and a beast unit, so the only thing missing from this of course is the Noblers, the backbone of the Ogre Kingdoms, or as some would say, the true power of the faction. Some of the ones saying that are probably Noblers though, but that doesn't change the fact that we need more Noblers. Although it might be a little bit weird not getting any Ogre units in an Ogre DLC, but we'll get to that. So first, I want the Blood Noblers. And they're what all Noblar trappers wish they were. They're Noblar hunters that live in the mountains of Morn, that naturally learned how to be trappers. And to become a Blood Noblars, they had to trap something and cover themselves in their blood, which is pretty gruesome. So basically, elite Noblar trappers. So they would have better stats, but they're still Noblars after all, so don't go overboard with it. And most importantly, better missile damage, probably similar to an archer unit. but I mostly want them because I want them to be able to put down actual traps. Because the normal trappers just slows and damages around them, but I want them to be able to lay down the trap somewhere and have the trap do maybe more damage and immobilize a unit. Because I think there would be a lot of fun strategies you could do, like cover your flanks with traps, or trap a choke point, or place traps next to a forest where you've hidden units. Because it would be nice to have traps that are, you know, actual traps. And while I'm wishing for elite Noblers, and elite for Noblar standards of course, I want Man-biters, and I just love the name. It's so perfect for the unit because they're Noblar versions of Man-eaters. So they would be properly equipped Noblars, so they would probably have some armor, maybe a shield, and some better stats of course. Maybe even a bonus versus infantry because they bite men, so that just makes sense. And I think they could give Ogre some morale boost if they're close, because they're just adorable trying to be man-eaters. So if we don't get any of those Noblars, what I really want is the Pigback Riders. And you might think that is Noblars riding pigs, and you'd be wrong, because it's Noblars giving each other piggyback rides as mounts. And it's so dumb, I just love it. And honestly, I feel like it's pretty much a joke unit. But I'm okay with that, because no one takes Noblars seriously anyway, so they would probably be a tier 1 or 2 cav unit, but infantry size, with double the mass of a normal Noblar of course. And give them some charge bonus and bonus versus large for the lances, and bam, Noblar can. Alright, so enough with the Noblars, it's an Ogre Kingdoms DLC. So there should be at least one Ogre, besides the Legendary Lord I guess, and Generic Lord, and probably Legendary Hero as well. But we don't know what their generic hero will be, and I don't think it will be the Noblar Big Honcho, even though that would be hilarious, and I wouldn't be opposed to a Noblar hero, but I would rather have the Bruisers. Because it is weird that the Ogres don't have a big beater character as a hero unit. So I think we'll actually get the Bruisers, because that would just make sense in the roster, and it is something that was in the tabletop but is missing from the game. And I think they will mostly be a straight up melee character, but with the ability to have pretty much any weapon they can get their hands on. Because that's something that just feels very Ogre. Just pick something up and start smacking people with it. Whether it be a big sword, a club, or a piece of a house. I don't care. It works. And they can do this by letting the Bruisers pick between a bunch of different weapons, probably in the skill tree or something. Let them choose between, for example, a Great Hammer for AP, dual-wielding swords for anti-infantry, club and pistol for some hybrid fighting, Iron Fist and a club for being a little bit tankier, maybe a massive halberd for anti-large or something like that. I think that could be pretty neat for a hero, and that way you could have a bunch of them and have them all do slightly different things. But if they get a Rhinox mount or something, then maybe they pick that instead of one of the weapons loadout, but give them like a great weapon or something. Because usually when a character gets a mount, there's no reason not to use that mount and keep them on their feet. So this will give you some options on what you want your Bruisers to do. You could either give him more speed and charge bonus if you put him on the Rhinox, but you don't get the ranged attacks or good anti-infantry that you get from having the pistol or dual-wielding swords. And that's pretty much all I can think of for the Ogre Kingdoms that I want for the DLC. And I think some of them are kinda likely, like the Bruisers and maybe Man-biters. I don't know what CA think about more Noblar units, so we'll see I guess. But that's gonna be it for now. Thank you so much for watching, I hope you enjoyed it. And if I missed something and there's something else that you would like, please tell me in the comments and I'll see you next time. Bye bye!